The Supreme Court's October 2024 term was marked by major decisions on equal protection, religious liberty, and separation of powers. While headlines often focus on division, the numbers tell a different story. Here's what you need to know: the facts, the trends, and the cases that shaped this year's docket. This term, the Supreme Court handed down 56 signed majority opinions and an additional 10 decisions per curiam, bringing the total number of opinions to 66. Chief Justice Roberts led the pack, landing in the majority in 95% of cases. Justice Kavanaugh followed at 92%, with Justice Barrett close behind at 89%. Justice Kagan was in the majority for 83% of cases. More often than Justice Thomas, Justice Alito, Justice Gorsuch, Justice Sotomayor, who each came in at 78%. Justice Jackson was in the majority the least, but still, more often than not, at 72% of the time. Let's look at some key cases. First up, equal protection. The court clarified important principles in workplace and statutory discrimination. In Ames v. Ohio Department of Youth Services, the court unanimously held that all employees, regardless of majority or minority status, face the same standard for bringing discrimination claims under Title VII. The court struck down the background circumstances rule, which had imposed a higher burden on majority group plaintiffs in some circuits. The court also addressed equal protection in Scrimeti, where it held that a Tennessee law banning puberty blockers and hormone treatments for transgender minors does not violate the Equal Protection Clause. Next, religious liberty. In Mahmoud v. Taylor, the court granted a preliminary injunction against a school district policy that denied parents the ability to opt their children out of lessons involving LGBTQ-themed storybooks in public schools. The court found that, at this stage, the parents had shown a likelihood of success on their claim that the policy violated their First Amendment right to the free exercise of religion. And in Catholic Charities Bureau v. Wisconsin Labor, the court held that Wisconsin's denial of a tax exemption to Catholic Charities Bureau violated the First Amendment, as the denial was based on the inherently religious choice of the organization. Another important theme this term was separation of powers. In Trump v. Casa Incorporated, the court held that federal district courts lack the authority to issue nationwide injunctions, finding such a remedy is inconsistent with traditional equitable practices and the Judiciary Act of 1789. In FCC v. Consumers Research, the court revisited the non-delegation doctrine, which limits how much authority Congress can delegate to administrative agencies absent sufficient guidelines, or in other words, an intelligible principle under which the agency can operate. The non-delegation doctrine has not had meaningful application in nearly a century, and this case was no exception, as the court ultimately found that the delegation in question provided sufficient guideposts to satisfy this test. While there were sharp disagreements and heated dissents in certain cases, on balance, this was a year marked by not only important questions, but also substantial consensus. If we look at the numbers, unanimous decisions made up roughly 42% of the docket, slightly higher than the average from 2020 through 2024. The number of cases where 7 or 8 justices were in the majority was also higher than the average for that same period. Just 6 cases were decided by a 6-3 margin down widely reported ideological lines. And those were some highlights of October term 2024 at the Supreme Court. See you next term.